It was December 14th, 1982 in Rio de Janeiro, a day that would go down as one of the most haunting in Brazilian television history. Maria Erinalda da Silva, just 23 years old, walked into a TV studio with her 9-month-old daughter, Danubia, cradled in her arms. The baby was critically ill, suffering from a rare eye condition that caused severe bleeding and pain. Maria had spent months begging hospitals for help. She went from Pedro Ernesto to Souza Aguiar and others in between, only to be turned away each time. No beds, no doctors, no answers. Her daughter was slipping away, and no one seemed willing or able to stop it. Desperate and out of options, Maria turned to television. She'd heard that a show called O Povo na TV sometimes featured real people's stories, often exposing injustice and corruption. The show was a popular mix of gritty reporting and sensationalism, hosted by big names like Wilton Franco, Wagner Montes, and Sergio Mamberti. It thrived on intense, emotional stories, and Maria hoped that maybe, just maybe, going on air could bring some help. She arrived at the studio around 11 a.m., anxiously waiting for the 1 p.m. live broadcast. When she was finally called to the stage at 1:40, Danubia's condition had gotten visibly worse. Holding her baby close, Maria told her story. She explained the countless rejections and the hospitals that kept shutting their doors. The hosts listened and criticized the failing healthcare system while the camera zoomed in, capturing Danubia's fragile face for the nation to see. But as Maria spoke, something tragic unfolded. Danubia was dying, right there on live television. Viewers watched in disbelief as the baby's body grew still. Just 40 minutes into the broadcast, Danubia passed away in her mother's arms. But the show didn't stop. The hosts kept talking about hospital failures, about bureaucracy, about injustice. But for those at home, the unthinkable had just happened. They had witnessed a child's final breath on live TV. After the cameras finally cut, an ambulance arrived to take Danubia's body to the Forensic Medical Institute. Maria left the studio devastated, still holding her lifeless daughter. O Povo na TV continued with its usual programming as if nothing had happened. No pause, no moment of silence, no real acknowledgement of the tragedy that had just unfolded on their stage. The reaction was swift and furious. Just 3 days later, a major newspaper published a scathing editorial accusing the show of turning a real-life death into entertainment. The broadcast, many said, had crossed an ethical line. The outrage spread quickly. Viewers and critics alike were appalled that the show not only aired such a sensitive moment, but did so without stepping in, without compassion, without care. While O Povo na TV had always flirted with controversy, this moment became a breaking point. The show kept going for a while, but it never fully recovered. Then, in 1984, it was shut down for good, this time due to another scandal. One of its regular guests, Roberto Lenruber, who claimed to be a healer, was exposed for offering fake medical treatments on air. He and host Wilton Franco were both arrested for fraudulent medical practices. Even after the show ended, the memory of that day in 1982 lingered. Danubia's death remained one of the darkest moments in Brazilian broadcast history, not just for the loss, but for how it was handled. A mother's plea, a dying baby, and an audience who watched helplessly. Years later, Maria expressed mixed feelings. She was still grateful to Franco for giving her a platform when hospitals didn't. But for the rest of Brazil, the incident remains a powerful reminder of just how far is too far, especially when real lives are at stake. It was July 14, 2024, in China, when 24-year-old Pan Xiaoting prepared for what would tragically become her final mukbang livestream. Known online for her jaw-dropping binge-eating challenges, Pan had built a loyal following that eagerly tuned in to watch her consume massive quantities of food. That day, her table was packed. 22 pounds of food, from fried chicken and seafood to rich chocolate cake. Thousands were watching. Pan's rise to fame was anything but glamorous. She started off as a waitress, struggling to make ends meet. But everything changed when she discovered mukbang, a viral trend that began in South Korea, where creators livestreamed themselves eating large meals while chatting with their audience. At first, it was just a hobby, but Pan's charisma and willingness to take on outrageous food challenges quickly earned her a growing fan base. She soon quit her job to become a full-time content creator. To keep up with the competition, Pan rented a professional studio and invested heavily in her live stream setup. The effort paid off, donations and gifts poured in, and she became one of China's most popular mukbang influencers. But behind the scenes, her success came with a dangerous price. Her challenges grew more extreme over time, some lasting up to 10 hours, featuring absurd amounts of food. Her parents were worried. They begged her to slow down, warning her that no amount of money was worth risking her health. But Pan believed she had it under control. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. She had already been hospitalized several times for internal bleeding and digestive issues. Still, she pushed on, driven by the expectations of her fans and the pressure to keep topping her last performance. On the day of her final stream, everything seemed routine. Pan smiled for the camera, chatted with viewers, and began devouring the huge meal in front of her. Fans cheered her on in the comments, but as the hours went by, her demeanor changed. Her pace slowed, her breathing became labored, and she looked visibly uncomfortable. Concerned viewers began urging her to stop, but Pan, determined to finish the challenge, kept eating. Then, midstream, she collapsed. Panic exploded in the live stream chat. Viewers pleaded for someone to help. Emergency services were called, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. Pan was pronounced dead at the scene. The autopsy revealed the grim details. Her stomach had ruptured from the massive intake of food, leading to internal bleeding and fatal complications. Experts later explained that eating such enormous quantities can stretch the stomach to dangerous levels, compress major blood vessels, and put severe strain on the heart. Pan's death reignited fierce debate over mukbang culture. Once meant to keep lonely viewers company during meals, the trend has increasingly become a spectacle of excess. Despite China's 2021 ban on binge-eating content under an anti-food waste law, many creators, including Pan, continued streaming these risky sessions. Her passing left fans heartbroken and shocked. Some mourned her deeply, while others questioned how content like this is still allowed. Pan's story is now a sobering reminder of the high cost creators can pay in the pursuit of online fame. On September 28, 2012, a routine Fox News broadcast took a shocking turn that would leave a lasting mark on American television history. What started as coverage of a high-speed police chase in Phoenix, Arizona, ended in a tragedy that millions of viewers would never forget. That morning, 33-year-old Jodan Romero, already wanted for a parole violation, stole a car at gunpoint in a Phoenix parking lot. Police quickly began pursuit. Romero raced through city streets, running red lights and putting countless lives at risk. The danger escalated further when he opened fire at officers and even aimed his gun at a news helicopter following overhead. To avoid putting more people in harm's way, police pulled back, using unmarked cars and aerial surveillance to track him. Eventually, Romero drove out of the city and into the Arizona desert. Around this time, Fox News had picked up the live feed, broadcasting the chase to millions. As viewers watched, Romero abandoned his vehicle on a dusty road and began walking aimlessly through the desert. In the studio, anchor Shepard Smith grew increasingly uneasy. "This scares me," he said on air, sensing something was about to go wrong. Then it happened. Without warning, Romero stopped walking, pulled out a handgun, and took his own life on live television. In the Fox News control room, panic erupted. Smith, realizing what was happening, yelled, "Get off! Get off! Get off!" assuming the broadcast delay would give producers time to cut the feed. But the delay didn't work. The footage aired unfiltered. Millions of viewers saw it happen in real time. Moments later, the feed cut to commercial. When Smith returned, he was visibly shaken. He apologized directly to viewers, saying, "We really messed up and we're all very sorry." Fox News later issued a public statement, calling the incident a severe technical and human error. But for Romero's family, especially his children, the damage was irreversible. Romero had 3 kids, ages 9, 13, and 15. They were at school when rumors started spreading about the broadcast. After school, the older boys searched online and discovered the footage. At first, they didn't recognize the man. Then came the horrifying realization. They had just watched their father die. The emotional impact was devastating. Neither boy returned to school. They suffered from nightmares, flashbacks, and deep emotional trauma. Their mother, Angela Rodriguez, later described how their mental health rapidly deteriorated after seeing the footage. She took legal action against Fox News, arguing that their negligence had exposed her children to unimaginable harm. The broadcast ignited national outrage. Critics questioned why such dangerous situations were being aired live with so little oversight. Police chases had long been used to boost ratings, but now the cost was clear. Viewers, especially children, had seen something they never should have. Romero's actions that day were undeniably serious, but the way his life ended, broadcast without warning, sparked a larger debate. How far should news coverage go? What are the responsibilities of media in moments of crisis? For Romero's family, the loss was deeply personal. For the media, it was a wake-up call. And for viewers, it was a moment that can never be unseen. It was May 16, 2024, in Suffolk, Virginia, a day that would end in unimaginable tragedy. Raleigh Freeman III, known to his fans as rapper Rio Huncho, was only 17 years old. Full of talent, drive, and charisma, he was building a name for himself in the music world. With nearly 29,000 followers on Instagram and a growing presence on Spotify, Rio was on the path to something big. That evening, Rio went live from his home, a casual stream for his fans. It wasn't anything unusual. He often used these moments to connect with followers and share his personality outside of his music. But this time, things took a devastating turn. During the live stream, Rio picked up a handgun, something he had used before in photos and videos as part of his image. This particular gun had a green laser and a flashlight attachment. At first, he treated it casually, almost like a prop. He waved it around, appeared to turn off the safety, and then, in what seemed like a moment of overconfidence, pointed it at his own head. He made a bold statement and pulled the trigger. A loud gunshot rang out. The phone dropped. The live stream abruptly ended. Many viewers were left stunned, unsure if what they had seen was real. Some thought it was a dark joke or a fake stunt, but the truth came quickly. Rio had accidentally shot himself. Emergency responders arrived and rushed him to the hospital, but the damage was done. He was pronounced dead shortly after. Authorities later confirmed that the gunshot was accidental and self-inflicted. The news rocked the local community and sent shockwaves through his online following. Rio wasn't just a promising rapper, he was a son, a student, a friend. His mother, Monica Savage, a single parent who had poured her heart into raising her only child, was devastated. In a heartbreaking interview, she spoke through tears, describing the moment she found him and her wish that she could bring him back. In the wake of the tragedy, Rio's cousin started a GoFundMe to help cover funeral expenses. The campaign highlighted the family's pain and Monica's deep love for her son. Support flooded in from fans and strangers alike. At school, teachers and classmates mourned his loss. His teacher, Cara Dorsey, shared words of encouragement online, urging students to honor Rio's legacy by working toward their dreams. A balloon release followed, a colorful, emotional tribute to a life that ended far too soon. Rio's accidental death also reignited conversations around gun safety. Authorities began investigating how a loaded firearm ended up in his possession. Experts stressed the importance of education and secure gun storage, especially in households with teens. Simple safety steps, they noted, could save lives. Rio Huncho's music, songs like Money Getta and DOA, remains as a reminder of his talent and potential. Though his life was cut short, his story stands as a powerful lesson on the importance of caution, awareness, and protecting our youth. It was the evening of September 2, 2011, and millions of Chileans were tuned into Calle Siete, a popular game show, expecting another lighthearted night of entertainment. But suddenly, their screens went dark. A serious news anchor appeared, delivering a message that stunned the nation. A Chilean Air Force aircraft had disappeared over the Pacific Ocean. The plane, a Casa C-212, had been carrying 21 people, including beloved television host Felipe Camiroaga and journalist Roberto Bruce. It vanished near Robinson Crusoe Island, a remote spot far off Chile's coast. What started as a routine relief mission ended in one of the country's most heartbreaking tragedies. The aircraft had departed from Santiago earlier that day, part of a humanitarian effort to document reconstruction work after the devastating 2010 earthquake. The team from TVN, Chile's national broadcaster, was traveling to highlight how communities were rebuilding. On board were TV crew members, businessman Felipe Cubillos, and others dedicated to the cause. As the plane approached the island, the weather turned treacherous. Heavy rain and fierce winds made landing nearly impossible. The pilots aborted 2 landing attempts due to poor visibility. On their third try, communication was lost. Minutes later, the plane vanished from radar. Rescue teams mobilized immediately. Local fishermen joined the search, combing the seas in hopes of finding survivors. But as hours passed and no one was found, hopes began to fade. The Chilean government soon confirmed the worst. There were no survivors. The loss was felt deeply across the country. Felipe Camiroaga wasn't just a TV host. He was a national icon. Known for his charm, generosity, and genuine warmth, he had become a fixture in Chilean households. His morning show Buenos Dias a Todos was a daily comfort to millions. The idea that he, and others like Roberto Bruce, were suddenly gone was unthinkable. Newsrooms were paralyzed. TVN colleagues struggled to continue broadcasting, breaking down on air. Across Chile, people gathered to mourn. Outside TVN headquarters, candles were lit, flowers laid, and tears flowed freely. Then came a haunting discovery. Among the wreckage, divers found a memory card, carefully sealed in a water bottle. It belonged to Romina Irarrázaval, a photographer who had been on the flight. Miraculously, the card survived. On it were 409 images, including 6 taken during the final moments. One showed the plane's cabin floor, another captured water rising against a window. Somehow, Romina had sensed what was coming and preserved a final glimpse of their journey. Investigators later concluded that sudden wind gusts and turbulence caused the plane to lose stability. It was flying low and slow, conditions that left little room for error. The aircraft crashed into the ocean, its wreckage scattered across the seafloor. The aftermath was devastating. Recovery efforts continued for months. Some victims' bodies were found, others never were, but the emotional toll had already been etched into the heart of the nation. The 2011 Casa C-212 crash wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a moment that united a grieving country. It took away familiar faces, voices that had comforted and inspired. Today, their memory still lingers, in the photos Romina left behind, in every tribute aired, and in the hearts of a country that will never forget. It was a warm summer evening in Quozhou, China, on July 20th, 2021. Xiao Qiumei, a 23-year-old crane operator, had just wrapped up another long shift at a construction site in Jiangxi province. Known for her petite frame, striking presence, and infectious energy, Xiao stood out in a field dominated by men. But what made her truly unique wasn't just her job, it was how she shared it with the world. Xiao had gained over 100,000 followers on Douyin, China's version of TikTok, by posting videos of her life high above the city skyline. She gave her viewers an inside look at the day-to-day reality of crane operations, all from the dizzying heights of her crane cabin. Her content was uplifting, her smile always present, and her videos challenged stereotypes about gender and labor. She was more than just an influencer. She was an inspiration. That evening, Xiao decided to record one last video before heading home. Her followers were used to her cheerful tone and playful style, often set against the unique backdrop of the construction site. At around 5:40 p.m., most of the workers had already left. The site was mostly quiet, with just a few people lingering. Xiao set up her phone, smiled at the camera, and began dancing and speaking like she always did, full of life. Then, in an instant, everything changed. The video turned blurry. Metal beams rushed past the screen. A sharp, terrifying scream echoed through the phone. Xiao's scream. She had fallen from her crane, nearly 160 feet to the ground below. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was too late. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Initial reports suggested that Xiao had been filming at the time of the fall, leading many to speculate that she was distracted by her phone, but her family firmly denied that. They explained that she was always cautious and professional, and she kept her phone in her bag during working hours. According to them, the fall happened because she missed a step while climbing down from the crane. A tragic accident, not a careless mistake. News of her death sent shockwaves through her fan base and across social media. Her followers, who had watched her dance and smile just hours earlier, were heartbroken. Many couldn't believe it. Some even shared the final moments of her video online, igniting debates about the ethics of circulating such personal and traumatic footage. Her family, devastated by the sudden loss, held a private funeral. In keeping with local tradition, her ashes were placed under a small umbrella on a table. Simple, quiet, and deeply moving. Authorities in Jiangshan City confirmed the incident and launched an investigation into whether proper safety protocols had been followed at the site. No further details were made public, but the tragedy raised broader concerns about safety in high-risk professions and how social media influences behavior in the workplace. Xiao's rise to internet fame was built on authenticity. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. Her content was real, relatable, and refreshing. She showed the world what it was like to balance tough work with the joys of everyday life, all while raising 2 young children. Her videos reminded people that crane operators weren't just part of the background, they were essential. Even though her family insisted her death wasn't connected to social media, the incident sparked comparisons to other tragedies, like the recent passing of Instagram personality Sophia Chung, who died after falling while taking a photo at a waterfall. Xiao Qiumei's story became a haunting reminder of how fragile life can be. Her vibrant spirit, so full of light and determination, was gone in a moment. As her followers mourned an online icon, her loved ones were left to grieve a daughter, a mother, and a wife. On August 23, 2010, what began as a peaceful morning in Manila, Philippines quickly spiraled into a national nightmare. A disgruntled former police officer named Rolando Mendoza hijacked a tourist bus in Shucha Park, holding 25 people hostage. Mendoza, 55, had been dismissed from the Philippine National Police months earlier over extortion charges he insisted were false. Desperate to clear his name and get his job back, Mendoza saw the hostage situation as his last shot at justice. But what started as a plea for reinstatement soon turned deadly. Inside that bus were 22 tourists from Hong Kong and 3 Filipinos, a driver, a tour guide, and a photographer. For 11 tense hours, the world watched as a standoff unfolded live on television. At first, things seemed somewhat under control. Negotiators managed to talk Mendoza into releasing several hostages. But as the day dragged on, his mood darkened. What pushed him over the edge was something he saw on the bus's TV. His own brother, Gregorio Mendoza, also a police officer, being arrested on live television. Gregorio had come to help calm the situation, but authorities suspected him of aiding the hijacking. Watching his brother taken away in handcuffs was the final straw. Mendoza snapped. The tension exploded into terror. One of the hostages, Mrs. Leong, would later describe how her husband had bravely tried to disarm Mendoza but was tragically killed. Through her heartbreak, she stayed strong, clinging to the hope of seeing her children again. As Mendoza's threats became more violent, the urgency to act grew. He warned over the radio that he had already harmed hostages and was prepared to kill more. Yet the police response was slow, confused, and ultimately disastrous. When the assault team finally moved in, things quickly went wrong. Mendoza, still watching the news coverage, was essentially getting a live feed of the police's every move. The media, without realizing it, had given him an edge. He fired shots as police tried to breach the bus, creating chaos and confusion. Officers hesitated, unsure how to proceed. They smashed windows, tried the back door, and retreated under fire. After hours of failed rescue attempts, snipers were finally ordered to take the shot. Mendoza was killed, but by then it was too late. 8 hostages had lost their lives. The survivors, some bleeding and in shock, stumbled out of the bus. Emergency responders rushed in, but the damage was already done. One of the most haunting moments came when the bus driver, Alberto Lubang, escaped and ran toward police, yelling that everyone was dead. His words hit like a gut punch and revealed just how badly the situation had spiraled out of control. The backlash was swift and fierce. In Hong Kong, where the victims were from, public outrage exploded. Families demanded justice. The Philippine government issued an apology, but tensions between the two regions simmered for years. A full investigation was launched, led by then Justice Secretary Leila de Lima, exposing one failure after another. It turned out the police had no real training in handling high-risk hostage scenarios. They missed key chances to neutralize Mendoza earlier. Worse still, the media's live coverage had unintentionally sabotaged the rescue effort. Several top officials were suspended or demoted, including Manila's police chief. The public demanded reforms, and they got some. New training programs were introduced, including a specialized tourist police unit. But for many, the changes came too late. The scars from that day still linger. Survivors and families continue to search for closure. The images from that day, the terrified faces, the broken glass, the heartbreak, remain etched into history. The Manila hostage crisis wasn't just a tragedy. It was a painful lesson in what can happen when preparation fails and desperation takes hold. It was January 27, 2021, in the quiet town of Smolin, Russia. At around 6 p.m., a familiar face appeared on a controversial YouTube channel known as First Step. That face belonged to 60-year-old Yuri Dushechkin, affectionately called Grandpa by his online fans. Yuri was no stranger to the channel. He'd become a regular over time, known for his warm personality amidst the chaos of each stream. But sadly, that night would be the last time viewers saw him alive. Yuri was participating in yet another live stream, broadcast to about 150 people. The stream followed the same format the channel had become infamous for: dangerous stunts, reckless dares, and viewers donating money to push things further. But this time, things took a tragic turn. During the broadcast, Yuri was encouraged by the host and viewers to drink an alarming amount of vodka, reportedly around 1.5 liters. As the stream carried on, Yuri's condition began to deteriorate. His speech slurred, his body swayed, and soon he collapsed. Yet the camera kept rolling. What made this even more disturbing was that Yuri's motionless body remained on display, live on camera, for quite some time. Some viewers grew worried and tried to raise alarms in the chat. Others didn't take it seriously, brushing it off as part of the show. When emergency responders finally arrived at his apartment on Udorov Street, it was too late. Yuri was already gone. The channel was run by a 39-year-old man known online as JEA, and it had developed a reputation for what are called trash streams. These types of live broadcasts typically feature vulnerable people, those struggling with addiction, homelessness, or poverty, who are convinced to perform degrading, risky, or outright dangerous acts in exchange for viewer donations. The more extreme the content, the more money rolled in. And Yuri, unfortunately, had become one of the most recognizable figures in this exploitative ecosystem. He wasn't just a guest, he was part of the show's identity. Over time, the pressure to keep things entertaining meant pushing boundaries further and further. The chaos of the stream that night, blaring music, a cluttered apartment, loud voices, masked the very real danger Yuri was in. As he downed more vodka, the audience egged him on, unaware, or perhaps unwilling to admit, how serious things were becoming. Once he collapsed, there was a moment of reckoning. While some in the chat begged for help to be called, others kept sending messages and donations as if it were still a game. Paramedics eventually arrived, but the damage was done. Preliminary reports suggested Yuri had died of alcohol poisoning, but a full investigation was quickly launched to find out exactly what happened and who should be held responsible. The reaction was swift. The Russian Regional Investigative Committee opened a criminal case, accusing the stream's organizers of negligence leading to death. Locals also came forward, saying they had complained for years about the noise, drunken guests, and chaos coming from the apartment used for filming, but nothing had ever changed. Even Russian Senator Alexei Pushkov spoke out, condemning trash streams as a dangerous trend and calling for legislation to prevent such tragedies. He argued that it was time to crack down on exploitative content that profits from people's suffering. Yuri's death shocked the online community and shed light on the darker side of internet entertainment. It wasn't just a single tragic event, it was a wake-up call. Critics began calling on platforms like YouTube to take stronger action against harmful content and do more to protect vulnerable individuals from being exploited on screen. As the investigation continued, one thing became clear: the culture that allowed this to happen, where human dignity is sacrificed for views and donations, has to change before more lives are lost. It was January 11, 2001, in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, a day that was supposed to be filled with laughter and fun. On the set of Shucha Park, one of the most beloved children's TV shows in the country, cameras rolled as Brazilian pop icon Shucha Meneghel performed for a live audience of nearly 300 people, mostly excited kids. The set looked like a vibrant amusement park, with giant props, colorful rides, and playful characters. It was a world designed to delight, but everything changed in an instant. As Shucha and her dancers performed the show's final musical number, a small fire broke out in one of the show's signature props, a large spaceship used for grand entrances. At first, it didn't seem serious. A crew member grabbed a fire extinguisher to put it out, but instead of dying down, the fire spread fast, feeding on the plastic decorations that covered the set. Within seconds, flames were everywhere. Thick black smoke filled the studio, making it almost impossible to see or breathe. Panic swept through the crowd. Parents, children, and crew members scrambled toward the exits, trying to escape the growing inferno. The intense heat began to melt parts of the set, and in the chaos, some children got trapped. One terrifying moment stood out. A young girl became stuck on a Ferris wheel prop. Hucha's bodyguard, Leandro Nilsson, saw what was happening and didn't hesitate. He ran straight through the fire to rescue the girl, risking his own life to save hers. He managed to get her out, but the fire kept spreading. Despite the chaos, some cameras continued recording, capturing the disaster as it unfolded. That footage would later be broadcast across Brazil, shocking millions. By the time firefighters brought the blaze under control, the damage was overwhelming. A total of 26 people were injured, most from smoke inhalation. 2 children, aged 7 and 10, suffered severe burns. An adult who helped with the rescue efforts was also badly hurt. While no one died, the trauma was deep and lasting. The cheerful world of Shucha Park had turned into a nightmare. Shucha herself, though unharmed, was emotionally devastated. Known for her close connection with children, she was heartbroken by what had happened. In the days that followed, she visited the victims in the hospital, offering comfort and support. But the emotional toll was undeniable. Investigators later confirmed the fire was caused by an electrical short circuit in the spaceship prop. There was no foul play, just a tragic accident. Still, the impact was huge. Shucha Park, which had been on the air since 1994, was immediately put on hold. Globo, the network behind it, decided to cancel the show for good. 8 unaired episodes were permanently shelved out of respect for those affected. The set was destroyed, and the magic that once filled it was gone. Shucha never returned to children's television in the same way again. For the children in that audience, and the millions who watched her every weekend, Shucha Park was more than a show. It was a piece of childhood. But after that day, it became a painful memory. No lives were lost, but the fire ended an era and left emotional scars that would last a lifetime. It was September 14, 2020, in Aba, a Tibetan autonomous region in Sichuan province, China, when tragedy struck during what started as an ordinary live stream. Lamu, a 30-year-old Tibetan video blogger, had become a beloved figure online. With over 780,000 followers on Douyin, China's version of TikTok, she charmed audiences by sharing slices of rural Tibetan life, cooking traditional meals, foraging in the mountains, lip-syncing to songs, and always dressed in traditional clothing, makeup-free and glowing with authenticity. Her content was simple but heartfelt, and it resonated with people across the country. But behind her bright smile was a darker story. Lamu had been trapped in an abusive marriage. In June 2020, she finally divorced her husband Tang after enduring years of mistreatment. Even after the separation, he continued to harass her, demanding she return to him. Lamu stood firm in her decision, not realizing the danger that still loomed. On the morning of September 14th, she posted her final video, singing a traditional Tibetan song. Later that day, she went live again, casually chatting with fans. But suddenly, the stream went dark. What her viewers didn't know was that Tang had entered her home, carrying a bucket of gasoline. Off camera, but still live, he doused Lamu in the liquid and set her on fire. Though the screen remained black, the horrifying sounds of chaos and Lamu's screams were broadcast to thousands of stunned viewers, powerless to help. Neighbors rushed to her aid, managing to put out the flames and call emergency services. Lamu was hospitalized with burns covering 90% of her body. For 2 agonizing weeks, she fought for her life, but on September 30th, she passed away. Her death sent shockwaves through China and beyond. Supporters raised funds for her treatment and flooded her Douyin account with messages of grief and outrage. Tang was arrested shortly after the attack and later sentenced to death. The court condemned his actions as cruel and calculated revenge over her decision to leave him. Lamu's death highlighted a much larger issue: domestic violence in China. Although the country officially criminalized domestic abuse in 2016, critics say the laws are full of loopholes, failing to cover non-married couples, same-sex relationships, or emotional abuse. In many rural areas, violence is still seen as a private matter, discouraging victims from seeking help. During her marriage, Lamu had reportedly asked authorities for protection, but her pleas were dismissed as mere family issues. That lack of support ultimately cost her life. In 2020, China introduced a 30-day cooling-off period for couples seeking divorce, meant to reduce impulsive breakups. But for abuse victims like Lamu, it can mean being trapped with their abuser for even longer. A 2013 study by the All China Women's Federation reported that 1 in 4 married women in China had experienced domestic violence. The problem is even more severe in rural areas like Aba, where traditional values run deep and women have fewer resources. Following Lamu's death, activists and fans turned her Douyin page into a digital memorial. Her videos, once a celebration of culture and daily life, became symbols of strength, sorrow, and the urgent need for change. Some local governments have since taken steps to prevent similar tragedies, including databases to track known abusers. But many argue it's not enough. Lamu's life was full of grace, resilience, and authenticity. Her death was a devastating loss, but it sparked conversations China could no longer ignore. Her story continues to inspire efforts for justice, safety, and real protection for those trapped in cycles of abuse.